Das sind nicht wirklich echte Voice-Aufnahmen, bitte. Hat der gerade gesagt, can we sub in Felix? Bei der Weltmeisterschaft Game 4, man geht auf Game 5. Ist das krank, Oh, ist das krank.
Who's that Pokémon? It's no way for you!
How Fnatic ruined Nemesis Karriere. Das ist aber 40 Minuten lang. Wir können mal reinschauen, ob uns das gefällt, Leute. Wir können mal reinschauen. Das scheint ein bisschen düster zu sein. Das scheint ein bisschen düsterer zu sein. Aber ich bin sehr gespannt. Mein How Fnatic ruined Nemesis Karriere ist schon ein sehr reißerischer Titel auch, muss man sagen.
Change in my poker would be
Lautstärke?
to quit at Worlds 2020.
There's so many clips of me talking about Fnatic on YouTube where the whole comment section is against me. If people just rewatch these clips when I'm talking about Fnatic, they will realize that everything I'm talking about is true. Fnatic is a shithole. That's all you need to know. Miracle that I survived 2 years in there. And I'm also like blacklisted by a lot of teams because of the narrative that I'm a bad teammate. They don't want to deal with this. Also, I associate myself with certain people that orgs wanna blacklist. Like, it was basically just like...
What the fuck is happening? Das klingt ja richtig übel, hä? Okay. Die düstere Welt von Fnatic und Nemesis. Voll interessant, ja.
Going to high school
Ist
and
Lautstärke
getting
so
bullied
okay oder
by
leiser?
500 people every day. Like, I couldn't take it.
Worlds 2020, the event that would seemingly end Nemesis' career or at least keep him away from the esports community for years to come. This European prodigy mid laner had things going for him, and today he's arguably capable of contesting top 4 mid laners in the LCK, having recently reached rank 2 on the Korean server, but he just ends up streaming, saying that he has been blacklisted by LEC organizations and cryptic men.
Da will ich jetzt aber einmal dazu was sagen. Nur weil jemand in Solo-Queue gut ist, bedeutet das noch lange nicht, dass er Top 4 LCK ist. Also das ist wirklich bodenloser Bullshit. Also zu sagen, weil jemand in Solo-Queue Rang 2 gepiekt ist, dass er ein Top 4 Midlaner in der LCK wäre, ist wirklich nicht. Also das ist Bullshit. Absoluter Bullshit.
Mentions of mistreatment by the Fnatic organization. This really begs the question of what just happened in Worlds 2020 that
Soll ich Untertitel anmachen für euch oder passt so? Wollt ihr Untertitel haben?
Nemesis walk on this dark path. Let's explore the rabbit hole of one of League's biggest mysteries.
Okay.
Before we continue this video, I would ask 2 things of you. The first one is to watch the entirety of the video. Most of my videos tend to just provide background on the situation, at least in the first half of the video, as I love giving context, whereas the second half of the video tends to come to the juicy parts that you're all here for. Secondly, I would ask you to leave any preconceptions or presuppositions that you have of Nemesis before forming your opinion on him or on this topic. Nemesis was born in Breznice, Slovenia, but grew up in Sevnica. A little fun fact is that Melania Trump, the wife of Donald Trump, also grew up in this city, effectively making Nemesis the second most famous person from Sevnica. This city wasn't exactly anything notable, just your average Slovakian outskirts city, which kinda gives you that hollow feeling. Nemesis discovered League of Legends via a browser game named Travian, which he played with his brother. They took
Travian? Da habe ich ja noch nie von gehört. Path to Pandora?
turns playing on the one computer that they had in the household, and Nemesis watching his brother would catch up to get on par with his skills, even surpassing him at some point. School for Nemesis wasn't something he was interested in, and he had a quick aptitude for video games, which is what he wanted to focus on in life. Nemesis began participating in LAN events, roughly about 7 of them, and was
Ich liebe diese alten LAN-Bilder, das ist immer so cool. Like, das war legit die goldene Zeit. Solche Bilder habe ich auch. Einfach so mit den Boys, ne? So 14, 15, 16, 17 LAN-Partys machen. Gut, wir waren jetzt nicht so competitive unterwegs wie die, aber einfach LAN-Partys da, dann ist das geilste Leben gewesen. Das war so cool.
In LAN events, roughly about 7 of them, and was the only undefeated Slovenian at LAN. He played with his brother Hyper and also Crowny. Nemesis and his brother laned bot lane together, whereas Nemesis played support. Nemesis' team was pretty good, even having the best Slovenian players on the team, such as Mickey X at some point. Things were going well for Nemesis, so he decided to become a professional player.
Na, da kann ich noch kurz sorry, dass ich so viel anhalte, Leute. Ich will ja die Namen von den Leuten, ob ich die kenne. Nemesis, Hyper, Harmony, Verbo, Linked. Danke. Okay. Ist ja schon so alt. Schaut mal hier. Wer kann sich an dieses Item noch erinnern von euch? Oh mein Gott. Und Seeker Rush Toplane Elise. Oh mein Gott, das war so nervig.
Nemesis, so
Das
he
war
decided
so
to become a
nervig.
professional player already in elementary school. His classmates and teachers didn't really believe in him, but his brothers seemed to think that he had the skills to easily become a professional player. Nemesis would have to aim for the national leagues to get his goal of playing in the S-tier leagues, and so he did. Nemesis would eventually get picked up by Mad Lions when they played in the Spanish League of Video Games Professionals, or LVP Superliga. This was new to Nemesis as he was in Slovenia for almost his whole life, whereas his biggest trips were just class trips with his school. But
Da ist noch Kanani mit dabei. Als er noch ein Spieler war.
now he had to go to Spain.
Geil, weil diese ganze alte Footage. Für
Ironically,
den war ich
Nemesis'
mit
first
dabei
day at the team
tatsächlich.
house would be as our
Haben wir
prelude
alles
or a
miterlebt,
foreshadowing
Leute.
for what was to come later in his life, an experience with the dark side of esports.
And on the first day, on the same day that I arrived, I'm obviously exhausted from travel. Like, I look like shit, whatever, right? The first day, Arnea forces us to scrim. I'm like, well, shit, that's not a really good idea, but okay, let's go scrim. I was taking scrims as serious as I could. Obviously, I wasn't performing to my 100% capacity, but my teammates were all CBAing the scrim. So, like, we're losing the scrim, we, like, lose, like, a game or two. Arnea goes and tells us in the face, if you guys don't win the next game, I'm literally booking you all flight tickets and you're going all home. And I'm just like, what the fuck is my first day of being here? And yeah, then we took it slightly more serious.
You're not in Kansas
We
anymore,
won,
Dorothy.
and then the day was fun after.
You could be.
No, he obviously said that
Yeah,
jokingly, but you know.
Well, this is sound funny. There's nothing. Jokes are normally funny.
Yeah.
Nemesis would perform extremely
Yikes. Wow, also das muss ich sagen, ist ein hartes Stück. Ich kenne Aranea auch. Ich habe sehr gute Erfahrungen tatsächlich mit Aranea gemacht. Als jemand, der sehr professionell ist und auch sehr freundlich und mit dem man eigentlich gut arbeiten kann. Hätte ich jetzt nicht gedacht. Ne? Also das ist schon
well in the LVP and even getting a pentakill during the Iberian Cup of 2018, awarding him the
Iberian
MVP
Cup.
title.
Krasser
He also
Name.
managed to get second place in the Superliga Season 13, losing first place in a narrow 2-3 to Giants Only the Brave. The timing of this would be
Ich will jetzt nicht zu viel verraten, ne? Aber gleich sollten wir da vorkommen. Also ESG. Wir sollten jetzt dann gleich vorkommen.
perfect as Fnatic would have an opening starting mid lane position with Caps leaving. This spot was a tall order to say the least to fill, as Caps at the time and still is considered the best mid laner in EU. To fill his shoes, granted to Nemesis, was a task appropriate for the hungry Nemesis. He would fill that spot and effectively start his actual pro career already 1 year
wir haben uns
playing in the
geskippt.
national leagues.
Na, aber alles
Nemesis
versucht.
also often looked up to Faker as his idol and actually followed his example in terms of an esports athlete's composure by having the same thought process as Faker. You see, Faker has always held his composure as an esports athlete, showing mostly no emotions at almost all the time, being calm and collected. Just like Faker, Nemesis also followed this example during his own esports career, and it's something that would stick with him. This composure or apparent emotionless presentation of yourself is integral to discussing what is to come and has been with him since before the Mad Lions arc. You should also note that even though someone has a composure, he isn't really an emotionless being, he just doesn't choose to show it in the public eye. The 2019 era of Nemesis being in Fnatic would have its own taste of the bitter.
Mann, der redet über den Iberian Cup und skippt EU Masters gegen uns, wo die gewonnen haben. Mit Selfmade Man und allen im Team. Was ist das für ein bodenloser Scam, ey?
Of esports. In 2019, from a pure statistical standpoint, there were some superficial struggles being shown. In the spring split, the roster came back from a 3-7 record 5 weeks into the split and would thereafter go on an 8-game win streak and went into the playoffs in the 3rd seed. They would finish in the semifinals, losing 1-3. In the summer split of 2019, their record was better, boasting a 14-4 record in the split and finishing off the playoffs 2nd place once more, losing to their rival G2 by 2-3. And lastly, the 2019 Worlds event would culminate in Fnatic reaching 6th place after losing to the world's winners FunPlus Phoenix in the quarterfinals.
Das war eine der größten Tragödien ever. Ich kann mich noch erinnern, wie ich mit meinem Popcorn lachend zum Public Viewing gegangen bin, G2 anfeuern wollte, dachte, yes, EU, wir sind wieder on top, wir können mithalten. 0-3 Klatsche. 3 20-Minuten-Games. Das war eine der größten Tragödien ever, das Finale.
Plus Phoenix in the quarterfinals. The roster had some internal struggles as well, but mainly players who didn't fit together and didn't like each other. For example, Broxa would retrospectively corroborate this.
I think Nemesis was a good player. I don't think we fit that well together, both in terms of play styles and like personality-wise, but I don't have anything against him.
Ich sag euch aber eine Sache. Wenn man sich mit Proxer persönlich nicht versteht, dann haben wir ein Problem. Weil, also legit, ich kenne niemanden, der sich nicht mit Proxer versteht. Das ist eine der angenehmsten Persönlichkeiten des E-Sports im richtigen Leben. Dieser Mann her. Also dann ist irgendwas stimmt schon mal nicht, ja.
It's just like we never really became super close friends, just because we're so different. But I have nothing against him at all. I mean, we are just extremely different people.
So in that sense, there was strife in the team. 2020 season, Nemesis
Raus aus
stayed
der
on the
Werbung.
roster and got signed once more, but there were some changes. Youngbuck, the coach of Fnatic, would leave and Fnatic would replace him with Mithy, who ventured to the coaching position for seemingly the first time after
Miffy, der hat so ein richtiges Glow-Up gehabt. Ich glaube, viele Leute wissen das nicht. Wir haben jetzt Game leider. Viele Leute wissen das nicht. Aber dieser mittlerweile extrem professionelle, freundliche Mann, war einer der größten Krebswünscher des ganzen Servers. Das war der absolute Satan mit Ocelot zusammen. Diese Todestoxicity.
for seemingly the first time after his 11th month tenure in Origin as a support player. Myth's reign over Fnatic would be dark, which we will explain more in depth later on, but his reign would also showcase his incompetence as a coach. Reportedly, Mythy tends to be a coach who appeals a lot to authority and also is very feelings-based. These are two qualities that are detrimental to a coach's character. Fnatic also replaced Broxa with the controversial SK jungler Selfmade while keeping the rest of the roster
Big mistake. Roxa war so gut. Das war ein Riesenfehler, den für Selfmade
together.
auszutauschen.
Selfmade joined the Fnatic team with the help of Nemesis and Nick de Cesare, otherwise known as LS. This was mainly because Selfmade was previously the jungler who played in Mad Lions with Nemesis, and they
Ist das nicht legit das Game gegen uns?
were friends together.
Nee, das ist
Selfmade
nicht.
has
Das
had a
ist nicht
controversial past, mainly due to his toxicity, which can trace all the way back to L9.
Wusstet ihr, dass angeblich Selfmade Man der bestbezahlte Spieler der LEC ist, weil der so einen speziellen Vertrag von Vitality hat? Angeblich soll der bestbezahlte LEC-Spieler sein. Ich kann mir das nicht vorstellen.
Where he was among the founding members of that club. The 2020 season would showcase just how bad Selfmade's toxic traits can get, and as well as
Also, obwohl der gar nicht spielt für die und nur auf der Bank sitzt, haben die im Vertrag so verschissen, dass sie ihm das höchste LEC-Gehalt zahlen mussten für eine Weile.
fracture the friendship between Nemesis and Selfmade. Fnatic's roster was doomed from the start, mainly due to incompetence. This roster comprised of mainly players who saw the game differently. If we assign red players as players who are much more narrow-minded, they view things more simplistic, don't take everything into consideration, or don't see the bigger picture and push the limits. Blue players would be the stark opposite, where they view things from a bird-eye view and not simplistic. Obviously, a perfect roster would be pure blue players, but in the case of Fnatic, that wouldn't be the case, with Reckless and Nemesis being arguably blue, and with both Selfmade and Hillsang being the red archetype players, coupled with a substandard
Really? Wippo und Hillesang Red Cycled Player. Reckless und Nemesis Blue. Also Wippo, das klingt komplett Bullshit. Also Wippo ist doch sowas von Blue. Oder nicht? Alles, was ich von dem gehört habe, ich meine, es kann sein, dass er zur damaligen Zeit, aber also Wippo ist doch sehr, sehr offen fürs Game und für Gespräche und für wie man das Spiel angehen soll und was seine Rolle ist und hat sich ständig neu definiert.
coach. Their spring split would come up with a 13-5 record, and their summer split became extremely tough for Fnatic. They finished off with a score of 9-9, which barely gave them a place in the top 4 and thus the start of the playoffs in the semifinals of the upper bracket. Fnatic managed to secure their place in the grand final, but would lose 0-3 against G2 Esports, who avenged their earlier defeat to Fnatic in the playoffs tournament. So it was clear to see that Fnatic had some issues with the team, but nevertheless
Die sind im Finale gewesen und haben G2 einmal geschlagen. Hä?
individually speaking, there were a lot of great players on this team. The reason for their tough summer split can be attributed to their roster being dysfunctional. Reportedly, their talks, discussions and team
Weiß der überhaupt, wovon er redet, der Kerl?
Meetings weren't used efficiently, their conversations weren't based in reality, and there was no structure to their methodology or how they would go through things, reach conclusions, or how to have conversations or conduct the day. Issues would keep coming up, and because no preventive measures were taken such that it didn't come up again. Moreover, the players had various and different fundamental views of the game. The Fnatic roster was a big team with big egos, as it is comprised of very individual talented players, but also inherently different players. There was some minuscule good that
Meine Freunde sagen, wer nicht kochen kann, der kann auch nicht sparen. Das habe ich auch gedacht. Aber du hast Hunger, aber willst nicht bis zum Ende des Videos
Löwenanteil,
warten. Klick
so
einfach auf
gut.
den
Code
Link
Nobel,
unter
ne?
came out of this difference though. Nemesis, for example, advocated for Selfmade's Evelyn pick due to it being a strong pick at the time.
But you guys realize that the only reason I was playing Eve, or I was allowed to play Eve, was actually Nemesis, right? Because Nemesis thought himself that Eve and Karthus are like the best junglers in the game. And then he was playing Lucian for me and sacrificing himself. I mean, it sounds weird sacrificing as Lucian, but yes, he was dropping waves often to just help me and stuff like this and not playing for lane.
However, the sheer strength of the negatives outshined all. Selfmade, for example, opted to play with Bippo and stated that the mid-jungle synergy was non-existent. Selfmade also retrospectively criticized Nemesis for being a passive player, which, for the record, doesn't really make sense, seeing as other pro players have the same stats as Nemesis.
Like, look at Nemesis, for example. I'm not saying that Nemesis is a bad player, but he's a mid laner, right? And his average kill participation per game is 30%, which is insanely fucking low. Like, he wins so many games where he has less than 50% kill participation, right? And to me, that's kinda illegal as a mid laner, but doesn't matter because he like doesn't die and just farms always. He has good CS, he's always useful at some point in the game.
Selfmade also complained how Nemesis wasn't conceding points because he was washed by LS's view on the game that you couldn't argue with, which just sounds that Nemesis wouldn't take bullshit, to be fair.
Like, I was in Mad Lions with Nemesis, right? For like
Okay,
good players to get.
okay. Aber jetzt muss ich mal sagen, also LS hat teilweise schon sehr wilde Takes und es stimmt, dass Nemesis die teilweise übernommen hat. Nemesis aber ist kein passiver Laner. Nemesis ist ein extrem starker Laner, der sehr unterschiedliche Playstyles erfüllen kann. Der kann sehr teamorientiert spielen. In Metas, wo zum Beispiel Galio sehr, sehr beliebt war. Oder auch andere hier Setup-Champions oder Enchanter, hat Nemesis sich auch untergeordnet. Er kann aber auch Carries und Control-Mate spielen. Also Nemesis ist ein sehr, sehr guter Spieler, der sehr, sehr versatile ist. Und ich kann mir auch nicht vorstellen, dass er die niedrigste Kill-Participation von allen Midlanern hat. Das macht wirklich überhaupt keinen Sinn. Nemesis TF ist Zucker. Nemesis TF ist sehr, sehr gut, ja. Sein TF Nemesis ist einer der besten TF-Spieler Europas. Selfmade, nach 2 Jahren, Selfmade ist auch so, das ist auch wieder so die Clownsnase auf, ey. 3 Jahre danach erstmal Nemesis flamen.
Together and buddies, and then he joined Fnatic and he wanted me as a mid laner, and then as a jungler, and then when I joined Fnatic, he became the best friends with LS, and we were not even like that big of a buddies anymore because he just had his washed by LS view of the game that you couldn't argue with. Well, thankfully he's not like that anymore, and our synergy was not really existent. I was mostly trying to play with Bippo back then. Nemesis
also disliked how Hylissang frequently died at seemingly random occurrences in the game.
I think Hylissang's like a very similar player to how he used to be. Like, to me, in my opinion, Hylissang's like a very similar player each year, which is there's a lot of int moments that happen for no reason. He obviously plays like his own champions really well. Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He's just too many int moments, in my opinion. That's like his biggest problem.
Because we had a rough fucking year. 2020 was a rough fucking year. Like, that was a hard year.
I mean, we lost basically every game. Every day. We had like multiple team booms as well, where people lost their mind. But I think every time we went up on stage, everyone tried their absolute best to win. And our player skill ceiling was probably the highest I've ever had, maybe. But in scrims it was a mess. Oh my god. Most of the days we went like 0-6 or 1-5.
Vippo allegedly stated that Nemesis' view of the game.
Ja, ich meine, die Resultate von Fnatic waren ja eigentlich sehr gut. Aber die haben halt einfach nicht zusammen funktioniert, so wie das jetzt alles klingt. Das waren halt einfach keine Kollegen, keine Freunde, die professionell miteinander arbeiten konnten, sondern das waren Spieler mit sehr starkem Ego, die einfach nicht kompatibel waren, oder?
is very different from the rest of the team. Effectively, issues within the team would persist and never be dealt with. Corroborating statements and leaks also mentioned how Selfmade in particular was becoming increasingly toxic and started to flame his fellow teammates. According to a link posted by Vulu, Selfmade was always flaming his teammates hard, even up until 2021 Fnatic, which is beyond the events of what we will explore in this video. He would other times allegedly flame and blame Nemesis post-game at multiple instances. Nemesis' response to this Vulu tweet was just jungle gap and upset road XD, which seems to imply that this may be accurate. Moreover, allegedly players would argue about past events while they're in game, which is just a weird thing to happen in the first.
Das ist aber relativ normal, wenn du als Team, wenn du Misserfolge hast, wenn Dinge nicht funktionieren, das schleicht sich so schleppend, langsam schleicht sich das ein in deinem Team und dann beginnt dieses Blame-Game. Gerade wenn du junge Spieler hast, es gibt sehr viele Leute, die sehr egoistisch sind und die wenigsten Leute können Fehler eingestehen oder können selber sich unterordnen oder selber Fehler eingestehen oder reflektieren über ihr Gameplay. Und das ist der Anfang vom Ende. Ja, das habe ich schon so oft erlebt im E-Sport, dass einfach diese Teams implodieren, wenn mehrere Spiele, mehrere Scrims über einen gewissen Zeitraum nicht funktionieren. Dann ist einfach Game Over.
Contributing to the aspect of dysfunctionality. So the environment on the team was pretty negative to say the least, and this negativity would continue during the lifespan of this roster. A little known fact is that Ellis was actually heavily involved with Fnatic roster during this time span. This is indicated by a Patreon Q&A posted on the 1st of August 2020 asking if Ellis was negatively impacted by the poor performance of Fnatic. My sources explain that Ellis would slowly be integrated into Fnatic, although he didn't officially join Fnatic even though he got offered the coaching role at 2 points.
Weiß man eigentlich, warum LS, obwohl er so viele Angebote immer bekommen hat, nie wirklich zugesagt hat zu Coaching Positions? Außer, ich glaube, offiziell war er einmal bei Cloud9 und dann wurde er direkt nach einem Monat wieder entlassen. Weiß man eigentlich, warum das bei dem so komisch immer ist und warum, das ist alles immer so ein bisschen...
Ellis would show up at scrims and draft discussions and even advocated for Reckless to play non-traditional ADC champions like Karma, Senna, and Shoga. There was even a Reddit thread made about this, and this was because of conversations Ellis had with Reckless. Ellis started spending more time with Fnatic in summer for free and whenever he had time. Mithy and Ellis talked on a few occasions only, and initially Mithy didn't like that Nemesis talked to Ellis as much as he did and would further dislike that players would eventually start having more conversations with Ellis. But the onset of Worlds 2020 would unfold a very dark turn of events. The Worlds 2020 event had a lasting impact on Nemesis, as it seems from this point onward his pro career would fade into nothingness, lingering on as a streamer for Gen G.
Leute,
would fade into nothing.
Das ist eine Challenger-Jacke. Holy shit. Habt ihr schon mal jemanden gesehen, der mit so viel Swag durch den Town läuft? Ich glaube, das ist eine Challenger-Jacke. Damn.
Lingering on as a streamer for Gen G. What exactly happened and how did this
Da muss man die
come to be?
Giga-Chat-Musik einspielen. Wie machen das eigentlich Reaction-Streamer mit den ganzen Werben? Wahrscheinlich einfach YouTube. Ich muss mir YouTube Premium kaufen. Warum kauft mir nicht einfach YouTube Premium? Come on, man.
To Worlds 2020 even starting, Nemesis was informed by the Fnatic management that he is going to be replaced. This information was revealed in retrospect and caused quite a stir. However, Nemesis also stated that this didn't affect him whatsoever, but something else did that is completely beyond his control as a human being.
Did you expect after Worlds that you may get replaced? Or did you think you will get another chance?
I knew I was getting replaced during Worlds, when even before I played one game of Worlds, I knew it, because they leaked it. Doesn't that fuck your mental? No, not that part, something else. Dealing with circumstances that are unlivable for a human being, that fucks my mental, not the fact that they do that.
Do you think it was deserved? But I feel very bad for you, bro.
Wait, also, Leute, also, ne? Aber, Twitch-Chat, please. Was ist das denn? Da ist aber schon, oh, Kassadin ist gebannt, warte mal jetzt. Muss ich jetzt direkt Katharina spielen, oder was?
I mean, that's just subjective opinion. I'm not gonna say anything. It's just, I think any player in the world will get replaced under those circumstances even faster. That's what I think. I don't think there's a single player that would survive.
Fnatic emerged out of groups in second place with a score of 4-2. In the quarterfinals, however, they would face Top Esports. This series was exciting to say the least, and at one point Fnatic were leading 2-0 against Top Esports despite not being favorites. However, Top Esports surprisingly started to play much better and won, cementing this as the first reverse sweep in World Championship history. Nemesis had some objectively bad plays during this series which were notable, but his teammates were also to blame as they were playing just as poorly. Selfmade, with his toxic past, would go on to flame Nemesis while they were in Game 5, which is just unfathomable to how a pro player should conduct himself. We can go back to Fnatic's voice comms, where every match was included except the last game, which was just suspiciously outright skipped. I mean, one of the evidences we have for this is that Selfmade also came with this distasteful passive-aggressive comment prior to Game 5 starting.
Game 5 it is. Okay, but like seriously, I refuse to play 5 games. Are you not gonna play or what? Can we sub in Fallguys?
Last game never happened, guys. I don't know what you're talking about. We're Game 4 right now.
Mate. Was ist Selfmade denn für ein Hurensohn? Hat der, das sind nicht wirklich echte Voice-Aufnahmen, bitte. Hat der gerade gesagt, can we sub in Felix? Bei der Weltmeisterschaft Game 4, man geht auf Game 5. Ist das krank, Oh, ist das krank.
It's fine, guys.
The rest of Game 5 was not included in the mic check, but VODs of this is available since I think Fnatic is still harboring these VODs, as, you know, the team would have to go through that post-Worlds 2020 as a VOD review. Furthermore, Nemesis in particular would state in a future podcast by Don Jake that everyone was just out of it mentally by Game 5. Nemesis also had no say in the champion picks, where Mithy, a feelings-based coach, would force Nemesis to play champions he didn't want to play, in particular Vel'Koz. I mean, to even prove that Mithy is an appeals to authority guy, he later said in a press conference post-game that Vel'Koz's pick was a decision he made, as this was a common pick by Chovy. Basically, you know, another appeal to authority.
We played in scrims against DRX, playing Vel'Koz, and then we tried one game ourselves, and we thought it's actually quite good.
Probably.
Das ist aber auch wild, muss ich sagen. Also, Vel'Koz ist wirklich ein Champion, der extrem viel Expertise erfordert und sehr viel Zeit, bis du ihn meisterst. Und den einfach so direkt zu picken, weil man ein Game mit ihm gespielt hat, und einmal dagegen gescrimmt hat. Das ist, man muss natürlich sagen, dass Pro-Player sind auch ein bisschen ein anderes Level. Ich glaube, Pro-Player können eher adaptieren, können eher solche Champions spielen, schnell erlernen. Das ist natürlich eine Sache, die einen Pro-Player auszeichnet und die wichtig ist für ihn. Aber also, das ist schon beeindruckend, was da gefordert ist.
My champion choices. I mean, my champion choices. Not that I should have made my champion choices, and then I should have played better Game 5, because Game 5 I was just out of it a bit.
So you don't feel like you pressed enough for the champions that you wanted? Do you remember what champions you wanted?
Yeah, I remember. Game 3, I think, or Game 4. Both those games I played champs I didn't want to play.
What did you want to play?
I don't know what I wanted to play, I just know I didn't want to play them. There was like other options, but...
And how much of that do you think it comes from, I mean, you're saying that you're not someone that necessarily speaks up when something dumb is happening. You rather will just sit and let it...
No, I will always speak up when something dumb is happening. The problem is when it keeps reoccurring and people keep doing the same mistake.
Would you consider the picks that were being made a dumb decision?
No, I think it was a very dumb decision.
So at that point, presumably that wasn't the first time.
Es ist nicht nur eine dumme Idee, es ist eine sehr dumme Idee, Twitch-Chat. Holy shit. Ja, das ist aber schon, man wird so zermürbt, wisst ihr? Das ist tatsächlich was oft passiert, wenn man ordnet sich dann irgendwann so unter, man wird zermürbt und irgendwann rutscht man in was rein, was einem nicht gefällt, ein Playstyle, der einem nicht gefällt. Du wirst gezwungen, die ganze Zeit Galio oder Lulu Mitte zu spielen und Enchanter und irgendwer nimmt deine Blue Buffs und es ist alles furchtbar und plötzlich spielt man Weakside Mitte und das zackt, man. Das zackt. Also ich verstehe, was er meint, aber irgendwann sagst du da nichts mehr dagegen. Vor allem, wenn es funktioniert, weil, es funktioniert, ne? Und du möchtest dann nicht immer wieder den Stress hervorrufen.
A dumb decision that's been made?
No, 100% not.
No, so why did you not speak up then?
I did.
But you didn't feel like you spoke up enough though?
No, I did speak up. What I should have done is, in Champs League, I should have just locked in a different champ with my keyboard and mouse. And I'm not kidding when I say this. No, I am not kidding.
No, I know you're not kidding. It's fucking hilarious though. It's hilarious that you would need to go to that level.
Wie steht ihr dazu? Wenn euch jetzt der Coach und das Team sagt, ihr sollt das und das picken in einem Competitive High-Level Setup, solltet ihr es dann picken oder solltet ihr euren eigenen Pick forcen? Ich persönlich würde nämlich sagen, dass tatsächlich hier Nemesis in der Schuld ist. Ich habe das Gefühl, im Competitive, der Coach und die Teammates, man kennt die Scrims, man kennt die Resultate Und man sollte einbringen können, was die Ideen von einem sind, damit der Coach die considert. Aber am Ende des Tages sollte wahrscheinlich das Team und der Coach die Entscheidung haben, würde ich sagen. Also ich glaube nicht, dass Nemesis hier richtig ist. Ehrlicherweise.
I don't think I need to say that this kind of thinking is extremely wrong. If you want to argue for a thing, you need to explain why and how, not just direct it because a person B did it. And especially in the league scene where pro players make mistakes all the time, such as building Morellonomicon when there is zero need for it.
Das ist, glaube ich, noch der Patch, wo Healing Reduction erst ab Morellonomicon hoch war. Oder nicht? Ist das nicht der Patch, wo du das starke Morellonomicon... Also, danach war ja gegen Silas auch die Meta, dass du Oblivion Orb gebaut hast früher. Also das war legit die Meta, ne, damals.
To this doctrine of thinking, you could ask Sven about the Mythicaya argument.
Also ein voll ausgebautes Morello First ist schon ein bisschen Grief gewesen. Also ich glaube auch damals war das ein bisschen Grief, um ehrlich zu sein.
They had, which was a huge blow up. After the test game, Nemesis, Beppo and Reckless all allegedly talked about how Mythi went on a tirade against Nemesis backstage, which basically amounted to borderline verbal abuse, just as something you would hear from the LPL scene. Moreover, Reckless thought that this behavior was unacceptable and would defend Nemesis, and this Mythi incident would become a very heated backstage thing as it went back and forth between Mythi and Reckless. I think Reckless reportedly mentioned that Mythi did it because Nemesis doesn't have a strong personality such as others on the team, and that Nemesis doesn't talk back, making it easy to hammer down on him. Mythi's behavior that day was pretty abusive and predatory, and it was very unwarranted as he looked to use Nemesis to blame for the game result. And you might psychoanalyze this.
Ich wusste nicht, also ich habe mit Mythi nichts zu tun, ehrlicherweise. Ich hatte den bloß früher in Solo-Queue und da war einer der toxischsten Persönlichkeiten auf ganz EOS. Das würde natürlich passen, ne? Ich dachte, dass der mittlerweile älter und professioneller geworden ist. So lernt man nicht aus. Ne? Aber coole Aktion von Reckless auf jeden Fall. Also Kudos an ihn da. Das ist auch nicht, ich meine, da verbaut man sich auch einige Sachen. Also es ist schon stark, dass er sich dafür einsteht. Ehrlicherweise.
But if you look at the press conference again, you can just see the look at Nemesis during the whole thing, and it looks pretty dark. Eventually, and allegedly, the Fnatic management would let players vote on whether Nemesis can stay in the team or not. Hylissang, selfmade, the supposed best friend of Nemesis, and Beppo went into an alliance and voted for Nemesis to leave. Reckless had a somewhat of a neutral position as he didn't want to cause a rift between his personal relationship with the other players. So effectively, it was 3 votes against Nemesis, and Nemesis alone voted to keep himself on the team.
To my knowledge, and my memory could be incorrect here, they had one-on-one player meetings going into 2021, and in the one-on-one player meetings, various players said who they did and didn't want to play with. That is what Tolkien is referring to here.
Regardless, as mentioned previously, Nemesis was already going to leave Fnatic due to the management's decision to replace him. Nemesis did also mention that something affected him during the World's 2020 run, which was something he didn't have control over.
Not that part, something else. Dealing with circumstances that are unlivable for us human beings.
I'm not entirely sure what this is, but we can speculate, I guess. While staying on his hotel for Worlds, Nemesis apparently lost 4 kilograms in body weight and only ate rice and Kit Kats. I'm not sure if this is 100% meme, but...
Okay. Ja, wir haben unser nächstes Game, Leute. Es wird ein Desaster. Wir sind Toplane gekommen und müssen Kale spielen. Also, dieses Drama habe ich legit gar nicht mitbekommen. Dass da hinter den Kulissen so viel Drama war, nie gewusst.
Yeah, I feel that is pretty bad. And this was also during the COVID situation. The peripherals granted to Nemesis were also substandard and made him feel awkward during play. There was also this one time where Nemesis...
the peripherals?
COVID situation. The peripherals granted to Nemesis were also substandard and made him feel awkward during play. There was also this one time where
die Fnatic Peripherals. Von wem sind die? Sind die nicht einfach... Ist das nicht Razer? Das ist doch einfach Razer, oder? Hallo? Okay, die Cam funktioniert, ne? SteelSeries, ja, das stimmt. Das kann, aber die waren die nicht immer ziemlich gut? Die Fnatic-Tastaturen. Die waren doch auch relativ teuer, oder bin ich blöd? Ich glaube, also
since he said that the hotel food was gourmet. What affected Nemesis during 2020, I'm not sure about it. It could have to do with his diet, something personal that happened unbeknownst to anyone, the massive amount of issues that happened prior to the World's 2020 event, the Mythy incident backstage that amounted to verbal abuse, or the fact that his peripherals was substandard. But that doesn't seem to be a big cause for performance issues, at least in my eyes. So for that, it remains a mystery. But what happened after the test game was unwarranted, undeserved, and completely unacceptable. Nemesis following Worlds 2020 would become a scapegoat for both fans and the team alike for the first reverse sweep in Worlds history. This undeserved, inaccurate conception had grim effects on Nemesis' path forward. The post-game Reddit discussion of the test game would criticize Nemesis to the extreme and even personally attack him. All of Nemesis' mistakes would be highlighted and discussed, and for the record, on Champions he was forced to play without any consideration of his teammates' mistakes. Nemesis needs to get...
Also, okay, bei dieser ganzen Sache, ich muss sagen, ich finde, das ist sehr interessant erzählt, weil da sind viele Sachen dabei, die, also zum Beispiel, dass du Champion fürs Team von deinem Coach zugeschrieben bekommst, die du spielen solltest, ist relativ normal. Weil der Coach baut ja zusammen du gibst dein Feedback und der Coach baut die Comp. Auch das ist also Peripherien, also manche Sachen klingen hier wirklich so, als würde man einfach halt irgendwelche fadenscheinigen Gründe finden, um zu sagen, dass jemand anders außer Nemesis schuld ist, finde ich. Das von Miffy nach dem Spiel ist auf jeden Fall unter aller Sau. Und dass es da Spannungen zwischen dem Team gibt, das merkt man auch ganz klar. Und das ist natürlich ein Riesenproblem, das du halt irgendwie lösen musst. Und dafür muss es eine Personalentscheidung geben. Aber super viele von diesen Sachen fühle ich überhaupt nicht, die Argumente. Und sowas wie Trash-Talk von Fans, wenn du verlierst, ist halt auch... I mean, come on. Da gibt's kein Competitive-Spiel, keine Fangemeinde, das wird's immer geben, ne?
Replaced yesterday. I hope Fnatic replace Nemesis next year. He's had enough chances. Plenty of mids in the EU will have more potential. Threads after threads, comments after comments, discussion after discussion. Nemesis was the issue. He was the problem. The people have had their say, and thus the false narrative of Nemesis being a toxic, bad player would be spun. Moreover, this narrative was further perpetuated when the Bwipo Nemesis drama would occur. In an article from November 2020, Bwipo gave his take on the reasons behind Fnatic's failure. Bwipo suggested that Fnatic should have ditched their mid-jungle combo of Selfmade and Nemesis, particularly because of Selfmade's inability to play selflessly. This obviously came from Selfmade's singular playstyle of carry junglers, which was incompatible with the roster. For example, you had the abysmal Vel'Koz, Kha'Zix's mid combo picked in the test game. Vivo then commented,
and after so many months, it's not something that you feel like getting into. That's why our mid jungles were dysfunctional, right? Because from square one they disagreed and they never like really fought it out, you know, and this happened for 2 years in a row. This happened with Brox's Nemesis as well as Selfmade Nemesis. And you can be like, oh, we can blame Nemesis for that. He was the mainstay, right? Yeah. Roster, like the roster lineup changes that I was suggesting was to change our mid jungle. And you might be surprised, like, wow, you know, change Selfmade? Are you insane? And it's like, no. He's a very strong player individually. He's one of the best junglers in Europe to play selfishly. But when it comes to playing selflessly, I've personally had a very hard time getting him to understand the view of the game that I want him to have in order to play selflessly. And this is why.
Also das mit Selfless sehr schwer, mit Selfmade-Man sehr schwer zu arbeiten, ist klar, ne? Also über den gibt's, sagen wir mal, genug konkrete Evidence, dass er sehr toxisch ist und genug Spieler und ehemalige Teamkameraden, die, sagen wir mal, ihn nicht unbedingt nochmal im Team haben möchten. Also Selfmade ist ein relativ schwieriger Charakter. Das ist, glaube ich, bekannt.
This is why, like, it was funny to me when you said, like, you didn't really, or that I sit back and watch things happen, as I used to. But I learned that, like, this ends in me having a team that I don't really like. And that was the problem I had this last year, is that I didn't feel like our team was connected whatsoever.
Moreover, Rekkles was joining the rival Team G2 at the time. Rekkles seemed to be a proponent of wanting the team to stay for another year. In an episode of League in Action, he thought that the 2020 roster was specifically the highest skill ceiling he has ever been a part of. Rekkles also reportedly responded on stream to a question regarding Nemesis. He was asked whether Nemesis is worse now or before, and Rekkles said that Nemesis is great, and he he's on par with Caps, arguably the best mid laner in EU.
You think Nemesis is worse now than before? No way, dude. Nemesis is great. Doesn't that guy have like multiple highlight reels on Reddit every day now? I mean, maybe Caps is better, but that doesn't mean Nemesis is bad. Doesn't always have to be like one or the other. Both can be good.
Nemesis did respond to Biff's criticisms.
I don't do those things. It's super unprofessional. I don't know. I don't go to public and talk shit about other people from my team.
Now, there's also this kind of revisionist sense when discussing this topic.
Also Bippo hat das doch sehr, ich fand, der hat das jetzt eigentlich schon diplomatisch und gut verpackt. Der kann sehr gut reden, finde ich. Also bis jetzt weiß ich noch nicht so ganz, wo der hin will damit, muss ich sagen. Du hattest ein dysfunctional Team, du hattest Akteure, die auf jeden Fall schwierig sind, mit ihnen zu arbeiten. Zum einen hattest du Miffy, du hattest Nemesis und du hattest Selfmade. Und Hillesang ist es anscheinend auch schwer mitzuarbeiten. Reckless und Bippo sind so ein bisschen außen vor. Reckless wirkt sogar so ein bisschen, als würde er alles kitten wollen. Jetzt kommt die Aftermath und dann Start of Streaming-Karriere. Jetzt geht's los.
Later apologized for these comments and now things between them seems to be amicable.
When's the boxing match between me and Nemesis? I don't think anytime soon. I think a lot of people think I hate Nemesis, and I really don't. I think what I said was definitely wrong, and I feel bad about saying what I said, because I don't think it was necessary. I think that was the main, that's the main gripe I have. Like, now that I've had time to calm down after the years, because we had a rough fucking year. 2020 was a rough fucking year. Like, that was a hard year. I shouldn't ever speak about my teammates in a negative context, or even something that could be perceived as a negative context, and I regret doing that, and I feel bad. I'm sorry for doing that. But fuck it. I live life, I make mistakes, and I deal with them.
Before we talk about the aftermath events, what were the
Der war sehr eloquent, ne, der Kollege, muss ich mal sagen. Ja, ist aber schon ganz schön eloquent,
reactions from the management from Fnatic? The story told so far seems to be autonomous and zero interaction from the management. In a future drama with a data analyst who worked with Fnatic named Tolki, we would get some more insights.
Tolki mal wieder,
Sam, the CEO of Fnatic, and Dardo, the team manager responsible for the league.
Das ist der gute alte Tolki, Leute. Man kennt ihn. So, ich muss einmal kurz hier bannen.
Legends team. Tolki mentioned that they have no clue about anything performance related, and as a team they had absolutely no support. I didn't see the point in continuing there. Torpedoed my whole career because of them. They fully knew Selfmade was a liability going into spring 2021. Nobody on the team wanted to play with him, but they benched Nemesis instead. Bippo and Hillesang wanted him out. Dardo pushed and said Selfmade was the right player and we had to keep him with Bippo and Hillesang. Then, wow, surprise, we had a terrible team environment. Nemesis reacted to this and said the following.
Should I prefer not to speak here, or I'm not sure if I should speak. This is true. Sam and Dardo are both clueless. They're definition of paycheck stealers. I mean, everyone knows this already. Fnatic.
The definition of paycheck stealers ist aber rough.
Need 50 years to figure out that.
Aber es gibt actually im E-Sport gibt's so viele paycheck stealer. Das sind irgendwelche Leute, die sich irgendwann mal in irgendeinem Bereich einen Namen gemacht haben. Das ist von Coaches über Analysten, über Spieler, ne, über Infrastruktur. Es gibt so viele nutzlose Leute. Ihr könnt euch das nicht vorstellen. Das ist absolut crazy, ey. Weil das ist halt der E-Sport, es gibt noch keine wirklichen Studiengänge, noch keine wirklichen Ausbildungen und so. Das heißt, du hast halt sehr, sehr viele Leute, die haben halt einfach dann irgendeine Historie und du musst denen einfach glauben, dass sie können, was sie machen.
People in the management have no clue. I had to deal with their bullshit my entire time being there, and yeah, I was, I was the scapegoat. So put me on the spike, chop my head off, and your bullshit continues when I'm gone. There is no surprise here. It doesn't matter. This guy's losing his job very soon. It's going to happen. Fnatic fans are just eating him alive, which is just right as fuck. Why did they decide to kick me before Worlds? I don't know what to tell you. I just had a lot of enemies, I guess. Happens. I had a lot of enemies and no allies. Someone has to be the scapegoat. But yeah, main reason why everything happened is this guy right here. This guy is playing Game of Thrones in LEC.
This leak or this comment originally came from Alice's stream.
Ich glaube aber, Nemesis ist auch nicht so leicht mitzuarbeiten, ehrlicherweise. Ich glaube, die hat auch schon, die meisten Pro-Player haben ihre Eigenheiten, wisst ihr? Und ich glaube auch nicht, dass es so leicht ist, mit Nemesis zu arbeiten.